Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into an incredibly vibrant and frankly often totally misunderstood chapter of Indian art history. We're unpacking the DECCANI schools of painting, and by the end of this, you're going to see absolute, undeniable proof that the Mughals were definitely not the only masters of the brush on the subcontinent. It's a super common historical misconception, and one we really need to tackle right out of the gate. Was all classic Indian painting born in the Mughal courts? For the longest time, historians just shoved Deccani art under this broad umbrella of Indo-Persian, or they just assumed it was some minor offshoot of the Mughal style. But as we go through this chapter, we are going to see that the Deccan actually sustained a full-fledged, fiercely independent artistic movement, with its own completely unique political and cultural vibe.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 1. The Deccani identity, 2. The Ahmadnagar school, 3. Bijapur mysticism and energy, 4. Golconda, wealth and surrealism, and 5. Provincial echoes of Deccan.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the Deccani identity, art south of the Vindhyas. So picture the Deccan. It's this massive, powerful plateau region in southern India, just south of the Vindhya mountain range. And during the 16th and 17th centuries, that geographical isolation from the north, it was absolutely crucial. It fostered a totally distinct cultural vision. The region was home to fierce, independent sultanates who nurtured artists to create works that met their very specific requirements for governance and their own totally unique artistic sensibilities. And this comparison brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean. On the one hand, you have Indo-Persian and Mughal art, which is highly documentary, especially when you look at its portraiture. But then, look at the Deccani style. It is entirely different. It favors these incredibly dense compositions. It uses intense, brilliant colors to create this aura of romance, and it expresses itself in a way that is just eloquently natural. It's sensual, it's vibrant, and honestly, it's completely its own thing. Moving right along to Section 2, the Ahmadnagar school, romance and vibrant fusions. Just take a look at this spectacular manuscript. This is the Tarif-i-Hussain Shahi, dating back to somewhere between 1565 and 1569, and it celebrates the reign of Hussain Nizam Shah I. Now, what's really striking here is that brilliant palette. I mean, the colors are just so much richer than anything you'd see coming out of the northern Mughal ateliers at the same time. And do you notice that high, circular horizon in the gold sky? That is a direct Persian landscape influence making its way all the way down into the Deccan. Think of these Ahmadnagar artists almost like visual DJs. They were literally remixing elements from all over the place to create a totally new aesthetic. They took northern fashion, like the choli bodice and the jama with those pointed tails. Then they mixed that with southern fashion, bringing in long scarves and rolling women's hair up in a bun, exactly like the famous Lapakshi murals. Throw in those Persian high circular horizons, execute the whole thing in these gorgeously rich palettes, and boom, a completely unique synthesis. Next stop, Section 3, Bijapur, mysticism and energy. Okay, let your eyes wander up this amazingly complex illustration from 1570. This is from a massive, richly illustrated encyclopedia known as the Nujum-ul-Ulum. The whole book has over 800 miniatures showing everything from weapons to constellations, but the specific painting is called the Throne of Prosperity. It's a lot to take in, right? So let's break this dense structure down. It's actually a symbolic diagram of an auspicious throne, built in 7 distinct stages. And it's supported by its different inhabitants. You've got elephants and tigers at the very bottom, working their way up to peacocks and primitive tribes. At the very top, crowning the whole thing, are these Islamic Persian arabesques. But right next to them, native Deccani foliage set against this incredibly deep blue sky. Even the basic structure of the throne itself echoes the wood-carved doorways of Gujarati homes or Deccan temples. It's just a masterclass in seamlessly merging strong Indian visual traditions with Islamic Persian coloring. Now, this piece right here is truly something special from 17th century Bijapur. The subject is a yogini, a female ascetic, living a highly disciplined life of physical and emotional training, fully dedicated to spiritual exploration. This was an extraordinary practice at the time, and depicting it was extremely rare. Notice how deeply engaged she is. It's almost like she's having a silent conversation with that myna bird perched right there on her hand. The artist, whose name sadly is lost to history, really crafted a brilliant mini-narrative here. They use this totally unique vertical composition that perfectly complements her tall, slender stance. See those tapering white structures at the very top? They act like a visual magnet, just pulling your eye upward. Her presence is even further elongated by her hair bun and that detailed jewelry. But to keep her grounded in this exquisite flora-filled landscape, the artist used those long scarves swirling in rhythmic circles around her body. It's just so beautifully balanced. Which brings us to Section 4, Golconda, Wealth, and Surrealism. So, Golconda became an independent state way back in 1512. By the late 16th century, thanks to a booming global port trade and the massive discovery of diamonds, it was phenomenally wealthy. And this court scene from 1590 perfectly captures that immense wealth. It shows dancing girls entertaining the young ruler, Muhammad Quli Qutb Shah. Just look at the lavish application of gold. It literally touches the deep azure sky and enriches the entire page. You've got ample use of purple hues, elaborately patterned carpets, flat, symmetrical architectural screens. But you know what's equally important here? What is missing? There is absolutely zero Mughal influence in this painting. None. As we roll into the early 1600s, Golconda started developing some very specific artistic signatures. Take this painting, Poet in a Garden. Notice how the sky is painted in these distinct, separate bands of gold and blue. And look at the plants. They are silhouetted so starkly against that mass of dark foliage. Using that dark, dense background to make the lighter foreground subjects totally pop, that is a classic, prominent DECCANI feature. But Golconda wasn't just about showing off courtly wealth. They also fully embraced this fascinating artistic surrealism. I mean, look at this masterpiece, the composite horse. It is exactly what it sounds like, an extraordinary image of a galloping horse composed entirely of intertwined human figures. Let's dissect this for a second, because that sense of visual dislocation you're probably feeling right now is completely intentional. Everything seems to be floating. You have flying cranes, flying lions, and these stylized Chinese clouds creating this totally surreal, airy backdrop. But just when you feel entirely untethered, your eyes unexpectedly hit those rocky formations down in the bottom corners, suddenly anchoring this whole dreamlike scene to solid ground. And remarkably, all this chaotic action happens within a super limited earthy color palette, mostly shades of brown and blue. It makes for an absolutely unforgettable visual experience. Finally, Section 5, Provincial Echoes of Gekkar. So the grand, highly sophisticated history of courtly DECCANI painting mostly stretches up until the 1680s. That's when the Mughals finally conquered the region. But the story doesn't end there. The DECCANI spirit absolutely lived on. While the grand court style faded, those incredibly vibrant colors and the love for popular Indian themes survived in provincial art. Under the Asafiya dynasty and in the provincial courts of Hyderabad's Rajas and Nawabs, the style evolved. It became these charming, slightly more naive narrative paintings. We see this all over beautiful 18th and 19th century depictions of royal polo matches, or paintings of revered Sufi saints, like Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia listening to music. To really sum up the core takeaway from this chapter of our source text, DECCANI art was a fiercely independent movement. It was never just a shadow of the Mughals or some imported Persian style. No, it was defined by its unique sensuality, its intense colors, and a very strong, undeniable affinity to the regional aesthetics of the South. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to ponder. We've seen how the geographical isolation below the Vindhya Mountains allowed a completely unique artistic language to just explode and flourish. It really makes you wonder, how does the unique geography of a region shape the visual soul of its people? Thank you for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this visual journey through the Deccan has sparked your curiosity to look even closer at the incredible art of the past.